All right. And so today we're going to be hearing from some people who are involved in the foster care community. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell their roles. And like we always do, you're welcome to unmute and jump in as we're going along, or we'll try to give questions at the end as well if we need to do that. So, but definitely informal. If you've not been here before, don't wait for us to take a breath, just unmute and jump in when you need to do that. So we have with us Emily Neff and Abigail Swanger and Meg Furman. And so I'm gonna hand it over to y'all and let you introduce yourselves and talk some about your roles in the community, and we'll go from there. Emily, you want to start us?
Sure, yes. So I'm Emily Neff. I am a foster parent for Watauga DSS. We are licensed, I think, almost 2 years come this May. So fairly new to the process. I also work for a nonprofit in Watauga County called WWAMI Community Action, and we provide services for low-income community members mainly. So that is my role in work. And we have panel questions that'll answer some other things about ourselves. So I'll hand it over to Megan.
Hey, I'm Meg Furman, and I am also licensed foster care for ages 0 to 21 in Watauga County. And I am this is going to be 3 years. And so we've had, I think my husband and I were talking, a little over 20 kids in the last 3 years. And so all ages, all walks of life, all different circumstances. I work at the Hunger and Health Coalition, and my work is mainly administering a community-centered health grant between the hospital system, Appalachian State University, and the Hunger and Health Coalition. And we work with certain communities in order to increase access to medical and health care while working on social determinants of health. So things like housing and employment, education, and so forth. All right, Abigail, it's all you.
Hi, my name is Abigail Swanger, and I have a child development degree from App State. I am currently the Assistant Director of Programming for the ASU Child Development Center, and I am a guardian ad litem for the 24th Judicial System of North Carolina. And I've been doing that since about fall of 2019.
Great, thanks y'all, and thanks for being here. Go ahead, Emily, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna see if Abigail could do like a quick elevator speech of what a guardian ad litem is, just so for people that don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a child has to enter into the foster care system, the DSS typically has an attorney, and then the parents either together or individually have an attorney, and then a guardian ad litem is an attorney for the child. So there is like a lead attorney, and then you go through a training process and become an official, like a court official. And you basically volunteer on behalf of that child and work in connection with the child, everyone involved in the child's care and the system, and also with the legal representation of the guardian ad litem system to make sure that that child's voice is heard throughout the process.
Thanks. Denise, are you cool if we just get into it?
Yep, I was gonna say, okay. You just go ahead, and if I have questions, I'll jump in. So I'll let you take it. You're in control.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm hoping this will work. I tested it with one of my interns a second ago to make sure that the video volume would work. I have a really short video, kind of just to set the tone of what foster care is like for children.
Emily, I don't know that we can hear it. I've had this problem so many times in Zoom meetings that I don't know if it has something to do with the number of the people on the call, but if you want to send me, I know
Yeah.
you wanted it to start off. If you want to send me the link, I can still share it with everybody when
Okay.
we're done.
Yeah, we can do that. I can actually send the whole thing to you when we're done. So, no
perfect.
problem.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, awesome. Let me get back to our thing here. Okay. So here is just kind of a little, basically a graphic that I really enjoyed looking through. It talks about a couple myths and realities before we get started on some questions about foster care. But one of the things that people realize or think that is true is that teenagers in foster care are too risky and they create chaos. So the reality is that part of any teenager's role is to be challenging. Those of you that have teenagers of your own that are not even in the foster care system, realize that all teenagers experience some type of trauma or issues, that they just have some behavior that goes along with that. We also have, let's see, most children in foster care have experienced trauma that cannot be healed. Using a strength-based trauma-informed approach, every foster parent can make a difference to a child who has experienced trauma. So that's the reality of that one. Another one is foster parents don't really care and do it for the money. We've all heard that. National research reports that foster parents actually foster children because they want to help the children and their families. Another thing that I learned when I was taking the class, and the reason me and my husband actually signed up and we were licensed about 3 months before our wedding last year, is that you must be married and living as a stay-at-home parent to foster children. The answer is no to that as well. So we were actually able to take in 2 foster children before we were even married. You also can work a full-time job. We both do that, and we have fostered as well. And the last one on here is that kids in foster care's biological parents are not good people and should not get their kids back. I think sometimes we all feel that way at some point or another when dealing with biological parents, but that is really not the truth. The reality is that biological parents have also probably experienced trauma within their lives as a child, either in their home or in foster care. So they're just people like everyone else, and everyone makes mistakes. So we'll get right here. Some of us have already shared a little bit about this, but we'll just go ahead. I'll start off and we can just go in every question from me to Meg and then to Abigail to answer all of these. So the first one is name and educational background. We've already shared our names. I also have a degree from ASU in child development, same as Abigail. And then I already shared my employer with WWAMI. I'm a foster parent. We've been in the foster system for almost 2 years now. And that's how I'm involved with the foster system. So I will hand it over to Meg if she didn't already answer all those. And if not, Abigail, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Meg. I have a degree from ASU as well in geography and community and regional planning. And then, as I said, I work for the Hunger and Health Coalition. We are involved in the foster care system because my husband and I, this is both of our second marriage. And so I have 2 older children that I've brought to our marriage. And so we are definitely a family, but we both felt called to be able to do something more within our community. And this felt like a really tangible way, like parenting children in our community. And to some degree, also their families. So I feel like I probably, Jessica could answer this better, but like I take shared parenting to a much further place than a lot of foster parents do. So I'm very involved in that and enjoy having relationships with biological parents and extended family members. And so, yeah, so does my husband. And I have 2 older teens, and both of them are very involved in the whole process as well. And like I said, this is going on our 3rd year.
And again, I'm Abigail, a child development degree from ASU. I currently work for the university in a child care center. I have been directly involved with the foster care system via guardian ad litem, but also indirectly with children that have come into my care since I've graduated. And I graduated in 2018, working for WWAMI with Emily, actually. And so there's children that we've been involved with in programs that WWAMI runs that have been in and out of foster care. We have spots at my current position that's kind of saved or that take priority if you're a foster parent. And again, I've been a GAL since about fall of 2019.
Thank you. Okay, so I think Meg already kind of shared why her and her husband decided to become a part of this process. Abigail and I can share what we feel made us decide to become a part of this. I work with children here at WWAMI in multiple counties, so we get to see firsthand how these children are living and who their families are. And my husband is a PE teacher at Hardin Park. There with Denise, so he sees a lot of children in and out of the foster system as well. So that is basically why we decided to do it. We knew that we had the financial stability and the house and the room in our home to share with children that needed a place to stay, even if for a short period. So that is why we joined in this process of the foster care system.
And so again, I've worked with Emily previously, so I saw those children as well firsthand. And Emily being one of my best friends, watching her go through and become a foster parent, I wanted to be involved. But I personally, in my private life, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment and just didn't have the setup to become an official foster parent. So becoming a guardian ad litem was a way for me to also get involved in the system and make a difference in some children's lives.
Awesome. Okay, the next question for us is, what has been one of our biggest challenges as a foster parent or GAL? I will start us off. I would say one of our biggest challenges personally has been, maybe just because we are younger, a younger married couple, is dealing with teenagers and how to kind of work with their behavior when it comes to their trauma, because they have had way more trauma than some of the younger children that are taken into care. So dealing with teenagers is something that I heavily leaned on Meg for some advice and guidance during this process. We fostered a 16-year-old and a 2-year-old. They were siblings for a little over a year. So we really got to know them and got to know their parents and their family and their whole dynamic. So I think working with teenagers in foster care is probably one of my personal biggest challenges. And I think Meg probably has a different view because she is awesome with teenagers and has super advice for anyone that is interested in learning more about how to help a teenager in foster care.
Well, thank you. Fun fact, I actually had the children that Emily ended up having. And so we all had a good connection. And so they were able to come back and do some respite with me. And that gave Emily and her husband a break, especially as they were newlyweds through that process as well. So for me, I think the biggest challenge has been uncertainty. And so I know that I do a lot of self-reflection. And so I think of, like, if this is so difficult for me, I can't imagine how difficult it is for the child who I'm caring for, or for their biological parents, or and it just really has. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything that teaches you to do better with that, other than time and just continuing to be in that process. So, it's just a very, there is definitely a process and a timeline of how things are supposed to happen and the order, and but that can get extended or shortened, or sometimes you may be visiting mom, sometimes you might not be visiting mom, sometimes mom might call you in the middle of the night. So that, I think that's been the most challenging for me. And I would say for my husband, not to speak on his behalf, but I think he would agree with that as well. Just the uncertainty of what's going to happen next. Like, will things change? Will things not change? And even if things are changing, are they going to go back? So that's been difficult. And then to add just slightly to that, I will say that our first placement was like a 3-year-old and a 8-year-old maybe at the time, and my kids were older, and so all of a sudden having to like buckle a child into a car seat after not doing that for 10 years and just that constant need, it took me a little bit of time to like get back into that groove of, oh, like I am now constantly needed. So that's been it for me.
I will be honest, when I first began my guardian ad litem journey, my biggest concern was my facial expressions. As Emily, I'm sure, can attest, I feel very passionately about the kids that are in my care. And so just kind of I can definitely keep my tongue in check when I need to, but keeping those facial expressions in check. Whether it be frustration with the parent, with the court system, or the raw emotion and just hurt that you can feel from that child, and staying a steady and consistent force for them when they are hitting you with they hate where they are or they don't like that. I mean, it's a hard place to be. And so staying strong and not, having a sad face or anything like that. But that was my biggest concern. But honestly, since I've started, the biggest challenge has been the pandemic, being because as a GAL, everything that I do now is via phone, email, or Zoom. They are not really letting GALs into court. I have never met the child that I am currently managing in person. I've only seen his face via Zoom. I've only talked to him on the phone, and people in his care, in the places like his kinship placements and things like that, I have only seen them either via Zoom or talk to them over the phone. And that makes it very difficult to kind of make and foster that connection with the child and with the people surrounding their life.
Abigail, before you leave, we had a question a few minutes ago, and I'll just throw it in now. What are the qualifications that you have to be a guardian ad litem?
Yeah, so I had actually heard about GAL during, some of the like career and expo fairs and stuff that they do at the university. And I shared a link to the Guardian Ad Litem website in the chat box. And the biggest thing that you need is you just have to sit through the class. Besides having, compassion and caring for the children in your community, they'd walk you through in this class. You get a heck of a notebook, and you go step by step in walking through of what it would be like, how to write court reports, how to connect with people, questions that you can and can't ask. They give you an official appointment letter and things of that nature. So I would say the first thing would just be to have a compassionate heart, and the second being to go through that training process.
So no certain age, educational background,
No.
Anything like that. So if you're interested, you can follow the link.
There's definitely certain educational backgrounds that I think lean toward being GALs. And that's kind of what WCCI is. We all have those caregiver roles, but there is no like degree or background that you are required to have. They just want you just have to go through that training.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our next question for us is, what are some common types of behavior that we have seen from children in foster care that stem from their past trauma? I can say for me personally, we've only had a few smaller foster children in our home, but the one that was very lengthy with us, I would say our biggest behavior that we had to deal with was kind of detaching our younger one from her teenage sister. They were very reliant on each other. They slept in the same bed, which ended up being terrible because they stayed up all night, not really getting the adequate amount of sleep that a 2-year-old needs, nor a 16-year-old. So when they came from Meg's house to us, we have 2 separate bedrooms that are right across from the hall from each other. So we kind of had to tell our teenager, hey, we're going to put your sister in her own room. She's going to have her own space. She needs, complete darkness. And it turns out she really needed a sound machine to soothe her to get to sleep, which is something that her older sister could not deal with. She couldn't do any type of sound, and she had to have some type of light in her room. So just kind of dealing with that behavior of detaching them from each other in a healthy way to where they realized, they're still there for each other. They're still right next to each other typically, but that sometimes we just have to be separated. That was a huge thing we dealt with. It took probably a few months for us to get them to realize they could still be together without constantly touching or holding each other. One thing that we had to deal with in the car, and I'm sure Meg remembers, is like holding hair. So our toddler would hold her sister's hair like this and just pull it down to where her head was basically on her lap. And it was pulling her hair out. Like she was actually getting headaches from it. So we kind of had to just slowly make it to where her sister sat in the front seat and we would just let her, get it out. Like she would scream. It would be a horrible drive, but eventually she got it and she was totally fine with her sister sitting in the front. If she sat in the back with her, she would ask her to hold her hand instead of her hair at that point. So I think just like the attachment behavior was something that we really dealt with. And even when it came back to, they went a few months without seeing their family besides just that 1-hour visit at DSS, which is really tough for kids and the biological parents. They don't get personal time. Someone's always watching them. So aside from that, to see or speak to their parents. So that was really tough. So once they did start doing weekend visits and visits outside of DSS, that behavior came back. So we had to work with the biological parents on, when they're with you, can you help us with this? Because this is what has worked. So definitely some of that co-parenting and shared parenting that Meg was talking about, that's what we really relied on when that happened. So that's probably my biggest behavior we've dealt with.
So, like I mentioned earlier, I've had a wide age range of children. And I would say some common behaviors are like bedwetting when they haven't been bedwetters before. And sometimes that takes a little time. Like they're okay the first couple of weeks and then they'll start bedwetting and they are embarrassed to tell you. So like that's the other thing on, like, I'm just kind of like very easygoing in general in life. So if I go upstairs and somebody's feeding me, oh, we just got to wash it. Next time, just throw it down the stairs. We'll take care of it. And so not making a big deal about those kind of things and talking about that has to, that there are some things that might be causing that. Are you worried? Are you anxious? Are there things at night that are keeping you from getting out of your bed? It's all very new and scary for kids. We always try to do like a walkthrough of our house and make sure everybody knows that everything is safe. Like you can get food anytime you want. You can go to the bathroom anytime you want. You don't have to ask us for these things. And even then, it still takes a long time for kids. I've had a child recently who we have a fridge in our garage that's all like it's all just drinks. So water bottles, Gatorade, whatever you could, seltzer is a big thing in my house. And so I just say, if you want a drink, go outside and get one. And like she just couldn't handle that. She was scared to ask, and then she, like, once we kind of got over the being scared, she still was really hesitant. And so like staying on top of those things of anticipating needs, I think that's the other like common behavior, is just not being able to communicate what their need is at the time. And so trying to become attuned to that and offering or anticipating those things ahead of time has been instrumental in our home. We also just a lot of like feeling repression, like they just won't communicate emotions. And so you'll be fine for those first few weeks, and then all of a sudden something will happen and they just can't control it. And so having to talk about like it's okay to have those emotions, and you have every right to feel this way. And we have used charts in our house, we have used pictures in our house, all different kinds of tools in order to help kids be able to communicate how they're feeling. I had a child who was fairly nonverbal. They were actually like selectively nonverbal when they first came to my house. And so having to work with them to be able to explore some of those emotions that they were having, because there was a lot of outbursts without being able to be communicative. So just anger or hurt. So using pictures to be able to show timelines of things, that's very helpful for our younger kids. So like, this is what comes next. I've also had some food issues and behaviors with children where kids have come from food insecurity, and that's the type of work that I do now. So I'm passionate about that as well. But either like not being able to control how much they're eating, or and just letting them know that there's always going to be food, and it's a long process. Like, I mean, I still think that I deal with some things as an adult from food insecurity as a child. So it's not something that's just corrected or goes away. And so being compassionate and understanding in that as well, like, oh, but we've been doing this for a year, you should know, like, you're going to have food, but you don't. So I would say that those are, and one more thing, because this has happened to me a lot with teenagers, and Emily can probably attest to this. I think there's something about my personality in general that like kids just cling to me. They become very attached to me very quickly, especially the older ones. And so that's been hard. Like they want to be with me 24 hours a day. Like if I'm awake, they want to be next to me, spending time with me. And so being able to teach kids like healthy relationships and boundaries. And it takes time, but that's been one of the things that I struggle with, because I need my own space, but also struggle in the sense of like teaching that as well.
So I made a little list because I had a lot that came to me and I didn't want to miss anything. But one of the biggest ones that I see is emotional regulation and the inability to do that. Something as that we would consider minute just has the potential to send a child over the edge, because they weren't raised with the ability of, okay, you've got this emotion, let's talk about it. How do we handle it? They don't have that support system of knowing, hey, it's all right to be angry because of A, B, C, D, E. But what's not okay is hitting people or breaking things when you're angry. Like, let's find a healthy outlet to express this and work through it. Again, extreme fatigue, kind of playing off of what Emily said, whether it's because they have never had a consistent sleep schedule, or they are fearful of sleeping, or just their little bodies have been going in that fight or flight mode. And then they come into a safer space, and then their body just takes over, and they're like, now I can sleep. Now I can rest. Now I can do this. And then that's all they want to do for a little while, because they've never been in that position before. Sadness. I mean,
Can I speak to Mr. John Levinson?
even in the most
Hey, Mr. hard positions, kids still don't want to be taken from their parents. They don't want to be taken from their loved ones. It's scary. And just that, and then that plays into a feeling of, well, am I not wanted? What did I do wrong that got me taken away from mom or dad or grandpa or aunt, whoever it is that's caring from them? This thought process that they create that is so not true, but that they have done something that has gotten them removed from home. Or if it's a child that has been cycled through maybe a couple foster homes or through the system multiple times, acting out and just kind of becoming that, like, a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I am going to push you to your limits because there is absolutely no way that you could want me because I am not a wantable person. And that is one of the most heartbreaking things for me, is when you see that kid that is trying to push you to a limit because they think that they don't deserve a better life or a happiness or a safe place, because there is something about them that there's just no possible way that you could want them. And then also delayed speech or cognitive abilities, because when they were born, there wasn't that interaction and they didn't have a caregiver talking to them and reading to them. And so their speech is behind, or they didn't have that interaction of, hey, like, we're going to learn our colors. We're going to start talking about the alphabet. We're going to have a communication, and I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing. Like, we're going to go change our diaper now, and things of that nature, and the potential of some physical delays as well. If you get a child that has just been like strapped in a chair the whole time, or they're just laid down the whole time and not given those chances and opportunities to learn how to roll over, learn how to crawl, learn how to use their legs and start walking. Those are all things that I have on top of the attachment and detachment that Emily was talking about, are things that I have seen, unfortunately, with children that have been in and out of the system.
Thank you. This next question I'm going to come back to if we have time, because it's kind of similar to what we just talked about. So we'll come back to that if we have some extra time. But next here we have, how do you see trauma in the children and their parents and families? So within their biological families, this is a question Denise wanted us to answer. I would say, I mean, it's a lot of things. You can tell when you first meet a biological parent that, you know, they've had trauma themselves, whether they're angry with you because they think that you took their children away. I know Meg has felt that way too, because people just accuse you and think like, oh, you came and took my child, when really, like, we were not there. We had to explain to our teenager, she really thought that we were keeping her from her parents. She thought that we took her, that we were the ones that called DSS, even though we did not know her. So one of the first conversations we had to have with her was, we want you to go back to your family. Like, your family is working hard towards this goal, and we are wanting you to be back with them. And then when it came time to where we were comfortable and DSS allowed us to speak to the parents, that's the same thing that I shared with her mother, is, you know, we want to help you with whatever we can help you with. Any advice you want or don't want, like, I'm not going to force anything on you. And that in turn it kind of helped her open up, and she actually ended up sharing her trauma and her past in foster care, and it was not a good past foster care experience. After, you know, over the years, foster care has progressed and gotten better, and we've had more training, but some of the parents that, you know, they had when she was in foster care were just not great to her. So the fact that those things happened to her made her really angry with DSS, made her really angry with us. She thought that we were going to abuse her children, that we were keeping them from her, that we were just, you know, locking them in their rooms all day. And we had to kind of explain to her, you know, this is what we do every day. This is our schedule, and this is how things work. And she eventually, you know, with that shared parenting, she took those techniques, and when they had their weekend visits, she put those into practice. So, I mean, everybody has their own trauma, whether it's from your childhood or your adulthood. but I think all of these biological families, just having their children taken from them is trauma in itself. Whether they've had trauma in the past, seeing your children taken from you or not knowing where your children are, that's really scary. I don't have children of my own, but I can't imagine not knowing where my children are. And at the beginning, they don't get to know that information. They just know they're in a foster home or they're in a group home. Sometimes they're sleeping at DSS. So I'm sure it's just so hard for those families to see that trauma happen to their children as well. So I'll hand it over to Meg.
Okay, so yeah, I would say a lot of my experience in this is that it's a cycle for some families, and not all families, but a lot of times that trauma is related to mental health. That's been concerns that have been untreated and undiagnosed and are often being self-medicated through drugs. And that's either these parents went through that same cycle themselves of having to raise themselves, and this is what they know, and this is how they are coping with that. I cannot imagine my child being removed and taken into foster care and not having any other coping mechanisms like that in my tool belt. Like, I would turn back to what I know. So I think about that often as I see people regress or fall backwards once their child is taken into care. A lot of the trauma is it feels insulating in the sense and isolating. So a lot of the families that I have had the experience to work with have been multi-generational families living together. And so a lot of times there's this dynamic between grandparents and the parent that is unhealthy. But the grandparent is then put in the place of having to parent that grandchild. And so it's like that full system is never fully addressed. It's only addressed there in the middle. So it's not, a lot of those things will continue to happen, right? Even if a case plan has worked and those behaviors and mechanisms aren't treated. So some of my direct experiences are, I think I shared earlier that I am probably more heavily on the shared parent side than a lot of people. And all of my parents have my phone number, my address. They contact me pretty regularly, if not daily. And like I have one family that like I've gone to lunch with them after court or during court, and we talk, and like a lot of times they'll be like, I just wish I could live next door to you. Like, can I raise my child and live next door and we do this together forever? Or like, I really wish that you were my mom. And this is somebody who is older than me telling me this. And that is heartbreaking, but also like encouraging to me. Like it creates a lot of conflicting feelings for myself in this situation. But so those are the kind of relationships that I build with bio parents. And I've had some cases where we have a family now that the daughter was in our care. Mom worked really hard, like out of the gate, worked really hard. It was not great circumstances, but she did what she had to do, and she got her child back quickly. And that was almost 2 years ago. And we still have a very strong relationship with that child and her mother. Like, we take them grocery shopping on the weekends. We take her to school every day. I talk to her mom every day, and she's been home for 2 years. So like, in knowing, like going back to the trauma in foster children and their families, part of the reason why this child came into care was because this mother had no support system. And so knowing that, and knowing that the choices she was making was based on that, we have had the ability and availability to become that support system Like, I know that I'm her emergency contact if anything should happen. And we have that with a couple of families that we've had over the years. So I just, when we talk about trauma, we talk about children and families. I think oftentimes about the idea that trauma can be not necessarily treated, but can be unpackaged, and that's something that needs to happen. But then I also err on the side of, like, I've seen children who have come in and out of care 3 or 4 times, and that in itself is so traumatic. And I don't know how, as a system or as a community, we help that. And that's one of the things that's really difficult for me too. So.
Meg kind of hit on a little bit what I see as well, and it's that cycle, it's that history, that family history of trauma. You see a lot of fear and lack of trust, whether it's the stigma that people have created around DSS, and that foster parent, like they're evil and wanting, you are malicious in this intent of taking my child away, or that lack of self-worth, that lack of self-confidence of, well, I was raised this way and I was never given any support. I never had A, B, C, D, E, and therefore, like, I'm incapable of rising above my situations because that's the way that I was taught. And then they don't have the tools once they themselves grow up and have children to break out of that cycle, break out of that lack of self-confidence. And so then they have basically just what the poor tools that they were given when they were growing up. And that's how they then teach their children. And they either don't want to put in the work of making that change because it is hard. And looking at yourself and reflecting on yourself is one of the hardest things that you can do. It's much easier to take that anger or that fear or that mistrust and place it on the people around you in the system, instead of trying to dive into yourself and fixing and finding out what it is that needs to be helped or fixed or moved along so that you can get your children back. But I see it a lot as just that it's really sad, but the generational and the lack of support that people feel from those around them, but also for their own capabilities.
Awesome. We are going to do 2 more quick questions and then leave some time so we can take questions if anyone has any. So we might have answered this one a little bit, but how do you build up resilience within the children in your care and their biological families? My short and sweet answer to this is the relationship that you have with the children and the biological family. Just being that example and showing them, what a proper relationship with a child is, how to build that confidence in the child and the parent. So yeah, relationships with everyone is just a key to this whole system. If you don't feel like you can work with someone who had their child taken away, then you really shouldn't be in the process, because the whole point is helping them figure out, what went wrong. Let's fix it. Let's do what we can to help you get well. So I'll pass it on.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's all about the relationship aspect, and I'm very intentional with our older kids of reiterating the fact daily that I love them, their parents love them, mom or dad or whoever is working really hard, or maybe mom and dad or whatever, wherever we are in this process, but that they are loved, and they're really excited to talk to them soon, or whatever that might be, in order to let them know that not only their parents still have those feelings for them, but that we also care for them and love them, and that we're supporting mom and dad and we're supporting them. So.
And again, relationships and connections, being a GAL, it's really, when a child is taken from their home, depending on their age and their understanding, it can feel just completely overwhelming, and like they are 100% out of control of the situation. And so it's my job to come in and say, I see you, I hear you, and your voice does matter. And it's going to be my job to make sure that your voice is heard. Because there are situations of, you know, maybe this kid really doesn't want to go to the kinship placement that the court is pushing for. And you have that connection to know, hey, this is like, I'm going to give you like this child's input. This is exactly why they don't want to go here. They don't like them. They don't feel safe. They don't feel whatever. Or the kids being like, sometimes you have kids that just, they don't want to go home. And you have to have that relationship to let one, have that child feel comfortable in expressing how they're feeling to you, but also letting them know that they still are a part of this process and they're not just going to be steamrolled.
Abigail, I'd say too, really quickly, that another thing, I often have multiple children in my home from different families. So I'll have like 2 cases or 3 cases in my home. And I think that with the resilience piece, it's good for them to be able to see that they're not alone in this. It's not just happening to them. Like there are other people who are experiencing this and have been through this, and it's going to be okay. So.
Okay, so the last question I'm going to ask is, how do you promote wellness in yourself as a foster parent or GAL? For me, it's just doing anything that is for yourself. So whether that's taking a walk, walking the dog, or just going out with some friends to dinner to talk about how stressful your day was, what happened with this toddler, and what happened at childcare, and you had to go pick them up because they bit somebody or kicked somebody. And that's kind of how I dealt with all of my feelings throughout this process, and still do. So just talking to people and taking some time outside for yourself.
I work out in my home. I go to the grocery store alone. That's a big one for me. And I make sure that I get enough rest. I'm an early bed timer for my kids. So younger kids in my house go to bed like 7:30. And I am usually in bed 8:39. That's important to me in order to be able to deal with the day-to-day that I have. So don't be calling me late at night.
One of my favorite things to do is I call my dad. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And then I just talk his ear off. But one of the things that I think has helped me the most is I utilize my dog a lot. I have a large German Shepherd Doberman mix, and there's nothing that helps me de-stress more than walking in the door and seeing something that is so excited to see you and love you unconditionally, and just exercising with her, because there is nothing that clears my head more than exercising. That is my safe space. That is my free space. I can do that. And that is the only thing besides, well, not even sleeping because you dream, but that is like the only thing that I can do where my mind is just cleared. And that is super beneficial for me, because sometimes you have to just step away.
Thank y'all for what you've shared so far. I did want to throw in, before anybody has a question, that we're always in desperate need of foster care placements, homes, approved homes. I think the number has doubled in the past 6 years, from like 45 to 80 or something like that. And so the person in charge of foster care at DSS is Jessica Weinbarger, and she actually is here. Jessica, if you want to unmute yourself and wave and say hey so people can see your face. If you don't know how to start that process, you can just call DSS and ask to speak with Jessica, and she can share some information with you. So always a critical need for us in this county. Often they're having to look outside this county or to group home placements because it's such a desperate situation. So if you've ever wondered if you would make a good foster parent or know that you would, I know she would love to hear from you, and she may have had to go, but so they're always in need. So we've got a few more minutes. Oh, there's Jessica. If we've got a few more minutes, if anybody has a thought they would like to share or question they would like to ask any of these ladies. While we're waiting to see if anybody jumps in, I know because I've done this social work a really long time, and I know even though y'all are talking about some challenging behaviors and some intense kind of events, I'm assuming there's support groups, and you mentioned something about helping each other. So can you just touch briefly on the types of supports that are available for people who choose to do foster care?
Yeah. I'll let everybody else talk too, but Jessica actually worked with Roberta Yates over at the Children's Council. Roberta she used to be a social worker, so she's got a lot of experience with that, and she has started kind of like every other month. I think we stopped calling it a support group, and it's more of like a share group resilience type thing. But basically, she just kind of asks some questions to get the conversation started, and it's instead of a training, it's more of like, what's going on with your foster child right now? How are you feeling? What can we do for you? What needs do you think need to be met within the foster community? And then we also have a group that started working prior to COVID on helping new foster parents, or even foster parents who have been fostering for a while, but maybe they get a new placement and they might need a meal, or they might need help going to the grocery store because now they have 2 extra children in their care. I know I personally helped a foster parent, find shoes for 2 children that she took in because they came with no shoes. So we all scrambled and ran to a bunch of consignment stores. We got all the shoes for free. So people in this community are super giving and willing to help out. But I think what we're trying to do in the community is just figure out how can we help each other as foster families, whether it's respite or, can we meet at the park and just talk while our kids play kind of thing. But I'll let Meg share a little bit because I know she's been doing it a little bit longer than me.
It's basically the same things. So I know that I have over time with children that I've had created relationships with other foster parents. And so just like Emily said earlier, she and I texted about things with teenagers, or I had a sibling group that had been with me for a year, and they were moved in order to all be together with a sibling who hadn't been placed with me. And so I got phone calls from those foster parents wanting to know, like, how did I deal with these behaviors? Or and they've been moved for a while now, and we still FaceTime every week and talk and get excited with the kids. But so those are the kind of things, just like maintaining consistent relationships, not only amongst ourselves, but amongst the children who are in foster care, and then utilizing my children go to Lucy Brock, and there's an amazing network there. And so I've been able to work with those teachers, and they've all been very gracious in the ways that they've supported us. And then even just like with family as well. So being able to reach out to family members whenever I've needed help. My niece is Molly. She's on here, Molly Mellishrinkin. She's watched kids for me before when I need it. So yeah, I'd say within our community, there's a lot of, there is like a respite night prior to COVID that was done at the Children's Place or at churches where foster families can take their kids, and there's volunteers there to maintain like a safe and healthy environment for them for a couple hours so that you can go out. So there are other groups and tools, and Jessica's always thinking of ways to do things for foster families in order to support us as needed.
Yeah, I was going to tag on and give Jessica a little tag there. I did my training and certification with Jessica, and Joel, who is a foster parent, he's adopted many children, and his stories are amazing. He just has so many plugs when you're in the class, so it's not boring at all. But I will say, I mean, not to scare anyone, but Jessica doesn't like put it in rainbows and sun shines for you. She gives it to you real, and she shows you like real life things that have happened. She brings in a panel at the end of past foster parents, and even sometimes a biological parent, and other things like social workers, and they just share real stories with you. So you go into it and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I thinking? But honestly, like the training, I go back to my book every now and then, but I think once you're in it, just those real life experiences and being able to contact Jessica or your social worker or other foster parents, that is what really helps you get through it all, because people really are the ones that matter the most.
And there's Jessica. She jumped on for us. So hello, Jessica. She's great to talk to. She definitely is very direct and honest and real. So would welcome hearing from any of y'all. Any other thoughts or questions before we go? We've just got a couple minutes, and then I'm going to let people leave to go to their next thing. So if you would like to type a message to them in the chat, I'll copy and paste it in an email to them. And we appreciate y'all making time for us today and sharing with us some of your real life experiences. One thing that we talk about in the WCCI trauma and resilience presentation is that having trauma, childhood trauma, increases the likelihood that you will have your own children removed, and that it's super high, like 98% of children in foster care have multiple trauma experiences. So just a good reminder that this isn't necessarily a choice that people make to lose their children, but that parents are dealing with a lot of hard things themselves. And so thanks for that reminder. So we'll let you go and hope that you have a great day. Hope to see you next week. Lindsay Sullivan and I are going to be talking about personal experiences with ACEs. So thank you, Emily and Meg and Abigail. It was good to spend time with you. Thanks for making time for us. We hope to see you soon.
Thanks.
Have a good day.